Hello and welcome to this informational video, which provides a summary of key information that will guide you as you prepare to administer the Government Performance and Results Act, or GPRA, Client Outcome Measures tool with clients you're working with. This video will provide a summary overview to help you become familiar with the GPRA tool and the basics of its implementation. More details are provided in the GPRA question-by-question instruction guide available online at the GPRA website. It's important to look at the GPRA question-by-question instruction guide before administering the tool with clients. The GPRA tool is divided into 8 different sections. These consist of A, record management, B, substance use and planned services, C, living conditions, D, education, employment, and income, E, legal, F, mental and physical health problems and treatment and recovery, and G, social connectedness. While all of these sections are important, this video will focus on providing targeted guidance for specific sections that ask about sensitive information, including Section B, Section F, and Section G. We'll discuss different sections of the GPRA tool, and we'll give a very brief overview of Sections A, C, D, and E, in order to focus in more depth on sections B, F, and G, which ask clients about sensitive information. Many questions in the GPRA tool ask about sensitive information, specifically those in Section B on substance use and planned services, Section F on mental and physical health problems and treatment and recovery, and in Section G on social connectedness. These topics are difficult for many people to talk about and may even be emotionally painful just to think about or remember. And clients may shut down or become dysregulated if they're taken by surprise by the content of a sensitive question. Therefore, front-loading or giving clients an advanced warning about upcoming question content for these types of questions can help clients to mentally prepare themselves to be asked about specific types of sensitive content. Make sure to read the questions ahead of time to familiarize yourself with specific details. The more prepared you are and the more confident you feel, the more you'll be able to convey a sense of groundedness and competency to the client, which in turn can help them feel more safe and encourage them to reveal sensitive information. The first section is Section A, Record Management. There's 2 subsections to Section A, Record Management and Record Management Demographics. Grantee program staff complete the tool's first section, Record Management, so please don't ask the client questions from the subsection. Instead, you can ask clients questions from the second subsection, Record Management Demographics, but only at baseline and intake. Section B covers substance use and planned services, and this section contains items to measure alcohol and other substance use in the past 30 days, substance use and mental health diagnoses, receipt of FDA-approved medications to treat alcohol, opioid, tobacco, and stimulant use disorders, overdose and treatment history, and there's also an administrative section regarding planned grant-funded services provided to the client. For questions which ask about the past 30 days, please ask specifically about behavior in the past 30 days. Please do not say in the past month as a substitute. This may lead to confusion and inaccurate responses. It may be helpful to front-load this whole section by letting clients know you'll be asking questions about how much and how often they consume alcohol and different types of substances, about any mental health diagnosis they may have been given, any experiences of overdosing on or overusing alcohol or other substances and subsequent treatment experiences, and also about any general inpatient or outpatient treatment experiences they may have had over the course of their life in relation to alcohol or substance use. For question 1 and 1B, you'll first ask the client, during the past 30 days, how many days have you used any substance? If the client can't report substances on their own, you should then read the list of substances here in this table on the slide. For example, we'll look at number 1. During the past 30 days, how many days have you used alcohol? If the client reports at least 1 day of use, you would mark that here under A, number of days used, and mark the number. And then you'd ask them, how do you take the substance? And you'd read the options. This would be in Section B for the route. 1 is oral, 2 is intranasal, 3 is vaping, 4 is smoking, 5 is non-intravenous or IV injection, 6 is intravenous or IV injection, etc. So if the response to section A, the number of days used is 0, you'd skip this whole section, section B, the root entirely. Questions 2 through 5. The intent of these questions is to understand if a client has been diagnosed with, for example, for question 2, an alcohol use disorder, for question 3, opioid use disorder, for question 4, a stimulant use disorder, and you can't see question 5 here, but that would be a tobacco use disorder. And for all of these questions, if the answer is yes, you'll need to ask the client about which FDA-approved medications they received prior to treatment, meaning before baseline or intake, and at follow-up and discharge by the grantee directly. So if the client reports a diagnosis in response to any of these questions, you'll then read the 4 different medication types that correspond and indicate the client's response for which of them were received in the past 30 days. For medications received, please indicate how many days or doses they received in medication. If they didn't receive a medication in the past 30 days or don't report having ever been diagnosed, check the appropriate response category and move on to the next question. For questions 6 through 9, this set of questions ask clients about whether they've overdosed or taken too much of a substance and what services they may have received in response, such as emergency department care, inpatient facility treatment, Narcan, etc. Please make sure to read the questions ahead of time, including a review of the GPRA question-by-question instruction guide to familiarize yourself with specific details. You can front-load these questions by saying, the next few questions I'll be asking has to do with any time you may have taken too much of any substance, and also about what happened afterwards in terms of any treatment or care you received. Question 6 asks, in the past 30 days, did you experience an overdose or take too much of a substance that resulted in needing supervision or medical attention? If the client asks what's meant by an overdose, you can say it means to take too much of a substance that results in needing medical attention. Please remember to review the GPRA question-by-question instruction guide ahead of time for things like skip patterns. For example, if the answer to question 6 is no or refused, you would skip to question 8. For question 7, it asks, in the past 30 days after taking too much of a substance or overdosing, what intervention did you receive? You may indicate more than one. And then you'll be given a list of options to read to the client, and they can choose all of them that apply, such as naloxone or Narcan, care in an emergency department, care from a primary care provider, admission to a hospital, supervision by somebody else, something other, and if the answer is other, they would specify, or refused. The GPRA question-by-question instruction guide provides definitions for all of these response options. So if you aren't sure what any of them are, please review them ahead of time so you'll be able to explain them to clients. Question 8 asks, not including this current episode, how many times in your life have you been treated at an inpatient or outpatient facility for a substance use disorder? Based on the client's response, you'll check off an answer from a list of options, such as 1 time, 2 times, all the way up to 6 or more times. Again, please remember to review the GPRA question-by-question instruction guide ahead of time for things like skip patterns. Here specifically, if a client answers never or refuse to this question, you'd skip ahead to question 10. So question 9 asks, approximately when was the last time you received inpatient or outpatient treatment for a substance use disorder? And based on the client's response, you'll check off an answer from a list of options, each with different time frames, as you can see here on the slide. Questions 10 and 10A. These items ask clients about whether they've ever been diagnosed with a mental health illness by a healthcare professional, and if so, which ones? Later in the survey, in section F, the client will be asked additional questions about their experience of any mental health challenges. You can front load this by saying, a lot of people who come to see us have been diagnosed with a mental health illness. The next few questions I'll be asking you has to do with any mental health illness diagnosis you may have received. Right now, we'll just focus on the mental health illness diagnosis, and later on, I'll be asking you more about symptoms you may experience or any treatment you may have received. Question 10 asks, have you ever been diagnosed with a mental health illness by a healthcare professional? Clients should answer yes or no. And remember to review the GPRA question-by-question instruction guide again for things like skip patterns. For example, here, if the answer to question 10 is no or refused, you skip ahead over 10A all the way to question 11. Question 10A asks the clients to self-report their mental health illness. You can ask, what were you diagnosed with? The diagnosis should match the list given in the table below question 10A. The client should be encouraged to report their own mental health illness, but if preferred, you can read the list of diagnoses to the client. If the client isn't able to give the exact name of a diagnosis as is listed in the table, for example, if they report that they have a mood or affective disorder, but don't know the type, like if it's major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, etc., you should describe the differences between the diagnoses. If you're unable to describe the difference between disorder types, you should select a general or unspecified option where applicable. If there's not a match between the client's reported diagnosis and any of the response options, please select none of the above. The GPRA question-by-question instruction guide provides descriptions of all of the mental health illness diagnosis listed in the table. So if you aren't sure how to describe any of these diagnoses, please review them ahead of time so you'll be able to talk about them and describe them with clients. Questions 11, 11A, and 11B should be answered by grantee staff only, so please don't read these to the client. Section C covers living conditions and asks clients about their current source of housing and whether anyone they lived with has used alcohol or substances in the past 30 days. Section D covers education, employment, and income and asks clients about any current enrollment in school or job training programs, about their highest level of education that they've obtained, about their current employment status, and about their financial security and personal annual income. Section E covers legal issues and asks clients about any recent arrests or pending charges, trials, or sentencing. It asks about their current status regarding parole, probation, or intensive pretrial supervision, and about their current participation in any drug court programs or deferred prosecution agreements. Now we've come to Section F, which covers mental and physical health problems in treatment and recovery. This section asks clients about their overall quality of life, their mental and physical health concerns, any treatment experiences in the last 30 days, and about their medical or health insurance. It may be helpful to front load this whole section by letting clients know that you'll be asking about mental health diagnosis and symptoms of distress, as well as about any recent suicidal thoughts or behaviors. And that's very important to front load so they're prepared. In addition to what we cover in this video, as always, please make sure to read the GPRA question-by-question instruction guide for detailed guidance on each of these sensitive questions. For question 1, the intent is to determine how the client perceives their quality of life. If the client asks what's meant by quality of life, please explain that it's a subjective concept that includes both positive and negative aspects of life, including everything from physical and mental health, their social functioning, family, education, employment, wealth, religious or spiritual beliefs, and the community and environment surrounding the client. For question 2, the intent is to determine the number of days in the past 30 that the client has experienced any serious psychiatric symptoms. Ask about each of these psychiatric symptoms separately and enter the number of days that the client experienced that symptom. The answer cannot be more than 30 days. Enter 0 in days if the client reports that they've not experienced the condition. Select refused if the client refuses to answer or provides no response. Please note, if the client reports 1 or more days in response to any of the questions from 2A through 2F, please refer clients to the 6MFU GPRA client resource list on the GPRA website. The 6MFU GPRA client resource list on the GPRA website provides information about important local resources like housing, mental health treatment, substance use disorder treatment, etc. Please keep in mind that there are numerous options for these lists on the GPRA website that are based on the location of clients at the 6MFU GPRA point. Please be sure to use a list that applies to the city and county where your client lives. If a client responds 1 or more on question 2F, indicating number of suicide attempts in the last 30 days, you should make a mental note of this and continue administering the rest of the GPRA survey. Importantly, then, when you're finished, please be sure to refer the client to additional mental health services. You can refer to the services listed in the 6MFU GPRA client resource list on the GPRA website. And please also make sure they know that they can call or text the 988 National Suicide and Crisis Hotline any time of day, 24/7, to receive free and confidential support for any time they feel suicidal or in a state of distress. Again, that's calling or texting 988. For question 3, the intent is to record the client's feelings about how bothersome the previously mentioned psychological or emotional problems have been in the past 30 days. It may be helpful to remind the client to respond to whatever problem or problems they identified in question F2. You can ask follow-up questions to probe the client further if they report a serious condition but say they weren't bothered at all by it. For question 4, the intent is to indicate where the client received medical care in the past 30 days. For questions 5 and 5A, the intent is to record if the client has medical or health insurance, and if so, what type. We've come to section G, which covers social connectedness. The section asks clients about any voluntary participation in peer-led support groups for recovery, about interactions with family and friends who support their recovery, about their satisfaction with personal relationships, and about any recent desire to change interpersonal relationships or places that negatively impact their recovery. It may be helpful to front-load this whole section by letting clients know that you'll be asking about their personal relationships and things they do that support their recovery, as well as any changes they may want to make about the people and places that negatively impact their recovery. In addition to what we cover in this video, as always, please be sure to read the GPRA question-by-question instruction guide for detailed guidance on each of these questions. For question 1, the intent is to measure whether clients have attended non-professional, peer-oriented mutual support groups to assist in their recovery during the past 30 days. The client does not have to be in quote-unquote recovery to attend these types of groups. A peer-operated organization is one in which the person or people who facilitate the group are not there as paid professionals, but rather are peers and/or members of the group themselves. For question 2, the intent is to measure whether clients have a social support network outside of a treatment or recovery support network. An interaction may be viewed as supportive and non-supportive at the same time, depending on one's perspective. Therefore, the creators of the GPRA tool recommend that you clarify the question by saying to the client that essentially what they're being asked is, if in the past 30 days, have you spent time with people who are supportive of your recovery, including family and friends? For question 3, the intent is to determine how satisfied the client is with their personal relationships, which can include relationships with family, friends, a significant other, and work colleagues, but ultimately the term is left to the client's interpretation. For question 4, the intent is to determine if the client realized that they have to change their social connections or places they frequent due to their recovery. After completing this question, you should refer to the GPRA question-by-question instruction guide, which will provide additional instructions on the next steps you need to take before completing the GPRA survey tool. And speaking of completion, this brings us to the end of our overview video for using the GPRA tool with clients. Please remember to review the GPRA question-by-question instruction guide for more details in order to be as prepared as you can be to convey a sense of safety, groundedness, and competency when you administer this tool with clients. We hope you found the information in this video helpful, and we wish you all the best as you gain experience administering the GPRA survey tool with your clients.